LG has had a bit of a rough history when it comes to its phones, and while it looks like the company is turning a new page for the LG Velvet, it still recently took the wraps off of the LG V60. The device offers high-end specifications, a huge display, and more. But if you're in the market for a new smartphone, there are likely other devices that you're also considering, like the Google Pixel 4 XL. The Pixel 4 XL also has a pretty big display, plus it boasts that awesome Pixel camera and stock Android. So which phone is better? Should you save some money and get the Pixel experience, or shell out for the extra raw performance? I've tested both phones and put them head to head to find out. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. It really helps support my work and I would appreciate that support. The first thing to notice about the V60 and the Pixel 4 XL are their designs, and they're pretty drastically different in that respect. On the front of the V60, you'll get an edge-to-edge display with a small semicircle notch for the front-facing camera, giving the phone an overall modern look. On the front of the Pixel 4 XL, on the other hand, there's a relatively large forehead and chin, and while the forehead does house some pretty interesting tech, the overall result is that the phone looks slightly dated. The back of the phones is different too. I have the white Pixel 4 XL, but the matte finish looks very different from the glossy white on offer by the V60. The LG phone has a little more branding too, which makes it look a little bit more cluttered, while the Pixel only really has the Google logo. Then there are the camera bumps. The Pixel 4 XL has a square camera bump on the top left, and it protrudes quite a bit from the back of the phone. The V60 has a horizontally aligned camera bump, and I don't like it as much as the Pixel look, but it's not necessarily ugly, and it thankfully doesn't protrude quite as much as the Pixel's camera array does. On the sides of the Pixel, you'll get a volume rocker and a power button, which brings a pop of color to the device. And on the bottom of the phone, there's a USB-C port. The V60, however, offers a few more features. Notably, there's a Google Assistant button on the right, and, thankfully, a headphone jack on the bottom. That's a big deal, especially for audiophiles who want better wired audio. In the hand, both of the phones feel pretty good, but I have to say that the matte finish and lighter weight of the Pixel 4 XL feels a little better to hold than the V60. The V60 is thicker than the Pixel and much heavier too, and the result is that it's pretty big in both the pocket and in the hand. I actually generally like the overall look of the Pixel too, except for the forehead, which I just wish wasn't there at all. Next up is the display, and LG seems to have switched up its approach to flagship displays. By that, I mean it's making the display on this $950 plus phone worse. The V60 offers a 6.8-inch P-OLED display with a 1080p resolution and a 60Hz refresh rate. And while it's nice that it's an OLED display, the other specs are not what you would expect from a flagship phone. The Pixel 4 XL steps things up. The display is smaller at only 6.3 inches, but it has a 1440p resolution and a 90Hz refresh rate, though that higher refresh rate only switches on in certain situations. Generally, the display on the Pixel is much better than that of the V60, and while the V60's display can get brighter, the Pixel's display is still bright enough for the vast majority of situations. The speakers on the two phones are pretty different too. LG phones have been a go-to for audiophiles for a few years now, and the speakers on the V60 are pretty good. The speakers on both phones can get relatively loud, and while the Pixel speakers seem to have a slightly more natural frequency response, you'll be happy with the speakers on both. Here's a quick comparison of the speakers in the Pixel 4 XL and the LG V60. Note that actual audio will differ considering my microphone and the room I'm in, and your headphones or speakers, but at least you might be able to get an idea of the difference between the two phones. Next up is performance, and as you would expect, it's a little different. The LG V60 is considered a 2020 flagship, and as such, it offers a Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 processor coupled with 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. The Pixel 4 XL, on the other hand, has a Snapdragon 855 with 6GB of RAM and either 64 or 128GB of storage. As a result of the last gen processor and less RAM, the Pixel doesn't quite perform as well as the V60 in benchmarks, and the V60 seriously outperformed against the Pixel in both Geekbench 5 and Antutu. In fact, the V60 is one of the top performing phones out there right now. That said, both phones perform well in day-to-day use, and I didn't experience any major performance issues on either phone. That includes in mobile gaming, and while load times were a little bit slower on the Pixel 4 XL is still a flagship level device, and you'll be happy with the performance on both phones. The LG V60 is a higher performer, and it has a bigger, better battery too. The Pixel 4 XL has a 3700 mAh battery, and while it will get you through a full day of normal use, the huge 5000 mAh battery in the V60 lasts a whole lot longer. Now, that's likely due to a number of factors, like the lower resolution display and more power efficient processor, but the fact remains that the V60 will last a full day of heavy use and even well into the next day. My battery test confirms that. The test involves streaming a YouTube video over Wi-Fi for 3 hours, and the Pixel 4 XL ended the test with 73%, while the V60 ended with 81%. Safe to say, if you want a really long battery, the V60 is the way to go. The V60 may have better performance and a better battery, but next is the camera, and that's where the Pixel really pulls ahead. Google has put a ton of effort into developing the Pixel's camera, and the result is a camera with deep colors and excellent details. It certainly has a look to it, but it's a good look. The Pixel 4 XL offers a dual lens camera with one 12.2 megapixel main sensor and one 16 megapixel telephoto lens. The V60, on the other hand, has a 64 megapixel main sensor, a 13 megapixel ultra-wide sensor, and a 0.3 megapixel depth sensor. Both phones are missing something. I would have appreciated an ultra-wide sensor on the Pixel and a telephoto lens on the V60. Though, to be fair, LG is able to achieve lossless zoom at 2x thanks to the 64 megapixel main sensor. In well-lit environments, both phones can deliver good photos, though the Pixel 4 consistently took more natural photos with more contrast. I found that the V60 usually produced brighter photos, but brightness doesn't translate to quality, and the deeper colors on the Pixel 4 definitely seem more true to life. The Pixel 4 XL takes things a step further in low light, taking far superior photos to the V60. Google's Night Sight is able to take quite good photos even in very dark environments, and with astrophotography mode, those photos are even more colorful. The V60's photos, in low light, seem to lack detail, and simply aren't as bright as the Pixel's. Then there's the software experience, and it's drastically different between these two phones. LG has long been criticized for shipping a lot of bloatware on its phones, and the V60 is no exception. The phone comes with a range of both carrier and non-carrier apps, plus there are even some games and other apps that come pre-installed out of the box. Some of those apps can be deleted, while others can't, and that's pretty frustrating. LG UX in general is a little cluttered, and while there are some cool features, like dual apps, which allows you to sign into different accounts on the same app, in general, LG UX can be a frustrating experience. The stock Android experience on the Pixel is the complete opposite of that. You'll get a clean interface with only Google stock apps, and a stripped-back experience that's easy to use. You also get super quick updates, considering Android updates are made available to Pixel phones the day they're released. LG has a spotty history with updates, so the V60 will likely be relatively slow to get new versions of Android. Considering how bloated LG's software experience is, it also takes up a lot more storage. The system files on the Pixel only take up 14 GB, while on the V60 they take up a hefty 28 GB. The V60 and the Pixel 4 XL have a few special features that some might like. As mentioned, the Pixel has a pretty big forehead, but in that forehead you'll get Google's Soli tech, which allows for facial recognition and air-based gestures like the ability to switch to the next or previous song. The facial recognition works pretty well, and is generally fast. The air gestures are cool too, but I don't really anticipate people using them all that much. The V60 doesn't have secure facial recognition, but it does have an in-display fingerprint sensor. Unfortunately, the sensor is pretty slow and often didn't recognize my fingerprint. It's definitely not as fast as Google's facial recognition. Another special feature on offer by the V60 is support for 5G. That might be a big deal for some, especially those that live in an area where 5G is already available. Also, the V60 supports LG's dual screen accessory, and while most probably won't use that, those that do will appreciate having a second screen for gaming, multitasking, and so on. So which phone is better, the Pixel 4 XL or the LG V60? Well, that depends what you mean by better. The V60 has faster performance and a longer battery life, but with a better display, better camera, and much better software experience, the Pixel 4 XL is the better choice for most. Check out the links in the description to buy the Pixel 4 XL or the V60 for yourself. And please subscribe to the channel if the video was helpful to you. Thanks for watching, my name is Christian, and I'll see you next time. See ya.